Trevon Diggs, Cowboys.
Yeah.
He tweeted at me recently for something. He said I've been quiet.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Calling you out?
Yeah, I ignored it.
Oh.
That's
not fun. You got to engage. That engagement's the name of the game. You got to get
mad. I just tweeted out an innocent stat at the end of the 2021 season that he'd given up over 1,000 yards in coverage.
Yeah.
Which is a milestone, which is good.
It's a milestone.
And that was before the 17th game.
Ah.
It was before the 17th game.
So it counts.
Yes.
Okay.
I made sure not to, not to do counting stats in a 17-game schedule and be like, I've never seen this before in my life, like everyone else does.
He also tweeted, so the main Twitter account tweeted something recently. Or what's it's not tweeted anymore. What is it? What's the verb?
We'll stick with tweeted.
Okay. They tweeted
not saying
with an X.
Something.
Well, so apparently they're supposed to be called like X's now, but I don't know what the verb is. What is like 2X?
X'd it.
He X'd it? God, I don't want that to be a thing. Anyway.
Did they workshop all of these?
They put something out into the social media ether that had Trevon Diggs, I forget who was next to, Slay maybe, but another corner who was good. And they had all their statistics, and one of them at the bottom was like number of open targets allowed, right? And Diggs quote X'd that and was like, what the hell is that? What even is an open target allowed? And I think the general consensus was, again, like you, it's best to ignore it. Let's not engage. Let's not feed the trolls. Whereas it would have been much funnier if they'd simply replied with a large image of him like trailing behind a receiver who was wide open, being like, one of these. Yeah. And you had 50 of them.
It's when a receiver's open.
Yeah. So I was just looking. PFF grade at corner over the last 3 years. He ranks 38th.
Yeah.
That's not great. He has allowed the most yardage of all corners in the last 3 years.
Come on, man. Stop being so negative.
I'm just simply reading out some statistics. He also has the most interceptions of any corner in the last 3 years. Tied, by the way, with Xavier Howard, who's also second in yardage allowed. So we're talking, these are some similar players.
They're very similar.
High variance, volatile, boom or bust type corners. And actually, so Xavier Howard has 17 interceptions, tied with Trevon Diggs over the last 3 years, including the playoffs. He also has 8 dropped picks. Diggs only has 2 of those. So Howard has been in position to pick off 25 passes over the last 3 years and has come up with 17 of them.
Xavier Howard's very good at getting to the ball, for sure.
Diggs has been in position to pick off 19 and has picked off 17 of them. Diggs might have the best hands of any corner in the NFL. I'll say that for him. Like, if the ball gets to his hands, he's probably coming up with it. And you can't say that about every corner in the league. What was fascinating to me recently, we did this whole Trevon Diggs dance way back when he had the 11 picks and the 1,000-yard season and blah, blah, blah. And you made the point that he would probably be a better corner the next year without anything like the number of interceptions. And that's exactly what happened. What I didn't realize until looking at it, relatively recently, was quite how extreme those numbers were in terms of the picks. Like, he has 11 interceptions that 1 year. Crazy. And then he has 3 in each of the other years, which is not even, it's a nothing number, right? It's the number you expect most cornerbacks to come out of a season with.
If you play 1,000 snaps, you'll
right. It's about average, right? So it's not even like, that year, that one season with the 11 interceptions has like established his reputation as he's this ball hawk corner where if you test him, you got to be careful because the ball's going to get picked off. He's going to go get it. And he does that a lot, but it's not like it's happened in any of the other seasons. It's that 1 year. And then the other 2 seasons is like, yeah, okay, he might be dangerous, but it's only resulted in 3 picks the other 2 years. So how dangerous is it? Like, it might be dangerous. On the other hand, he gave up 760 yards this year and 650 the first year. So it's probably still worth taking a crack at him,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance to all of this stuff. Thank you for, putting that out there. When my statements on the 11 interception season, right? Like he'll probably get better and he won't get as much publicity. When we talk about level of play and value, again, there's a difference between like, is the interception really valuable for the team? Yes, it's awesome for the team, but can you bank on that going forward? Obviously, the Cowboys could not. They could not go into the 2022 season last year and be like, well, we know Diggs is going to get his 8 picks, so we're good with that. He got 3. So next year, he'll probably revert back to 6 or 7 if he stays healthy. I think the things that are in his favor, Trevon Diggs, he's never really had a good cornerback opposite him in Dallas. Sure. It's been a revolving door of injuries and poor play, and now Stephon Gilmore's there. But that also brings up some of the perspective. As I was digging through Diggs' numbers, like where does he succeed other than just saying he gets his hands on a lot of footballs, even if it was saturated in one season? Diggs does his best work in zone coverages and playing with his eyes on the football where he can go be a ball hawk and make plays. But when you look at him in man coverage, just going, including all off the ball assignment when he's not targeted and everything, he does allow separation. He does get beaten at times. So for perspective, NFL corners when they're playing man, the average grade is like in the 50s, right? It's not great. It's a challenging role. And he's about 40. He's about average to below average in man coverage. But new teammate Stephon Gilmore, even though he's getting older, grades in the 80s over the last couple of years in man coverage, even in his early 30s.
Right.
So it just kind of shows this perspective. It's not like Diggs is playing lockdown football. And when you do, like, it's not Darrelle Revis where it's lockdown at all times. And by the way, if you target him, it's turning around the other way. There is boom or bust to this. Xavier Howard, I think, is the perfect comp.
Yeah.
And in our 10 plus years at PFF, when we get into discussions with fan bases or when we try to explain grades versus stats and everything, the big ones are always sack totals, right, for linemen, and then interception totals. The things that are just a handful of plays over a year when we're focused on the hundreds or 1,000. And Diggs is, I think he's a good corner. I think he's fine. Last year he was a top 25 most valuable corner. I think he's fine.
Xavier Howard,
but he might actually. But all that said, he might be even better with Stephon Gilmore here, where he might have be able to take even more chances.
Corner's really tricky because those interceptions are worth so much, but they're so incredibly luck-driven or variance-driven or fortune. However you want to describe that, it's not necessarily a controllable, repeatable skill. And there are very few corners in the NFL that can consistently, year on year, exceed the average number of interceptions, right? They don't tend to happen. So Xavier Howard is another corner who, like Diggs, has had that 1 year where he had like double-digit picks, right? And we're like, wow, this is insane. 10 interceptions back in 2020. Never did that again. But unlike Diggs, he's had a couple of other seasons where he's had a 7 interception season in 2018. He had a 5-pick season in 2021. But he's also had 2 1-pick seasons. Last year he only had 2. Like it's a hugely variance-driven type of thing. But for him, that shakes out to over the last 3 years, he's had joint top. So what's fascinating to me with Diggs is over his career so far, he is the second worst cornerback in the NFL in yards per coverage snap allowed, right? 1.5 yards per coverage snap. So every single snap he's out there on a passing play, the offense is effectively moving forward 1.5 yards. That's not great, right? But you look at passer rating allowed when targeted, and he's in the top 20, right? And that's a stat like EPA, which is driven massively by interceptions, which we know for Diggs is driven massively by 1 year. So to the real question for him in terms of will he justify this deal going forward is, what does that baseline end up shaking out to be over that period of time? It's not even like generally, or is it even a fair measure? It's simply, in order for him to justify that, he needs to catch a high end of the variance at some point again. If he doesn't, if he goes like 3, he won't justify that contract.
I think it's okay to expect him to do that, though, because it's not only grade.
Well, because the hands thing that we mentioned earlier is real.
I was going to say
he is a good receiver. He will catch the football if it's possible to do. It's just that his opportunities to do that is massively luck driven. It's not in his control necessarily.
That's why I was going to say the traits are there. Like that's where like the traits aspect of it mattered. The same way when Xavier Howard came out and we described him, we're like, man, some plays he looks like Richard Sherman, other plays he looks like a bad Big 12 corner. But when you get the high end of variance from Xavier Howard, you have big seasons, and we've seen that. I do think we talk a lot from a team building standpoint, kind of chasing that high end of variance. We talk about if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, take chances and draft more quarterbacks and everything. I think there's something to the Dallas Cowboys investing in a corner that has a high end of variance. Now they have a Stephon Gilmore on the other side who could still cover. Diggs might get targeted a few more times. And I think it's okay for Dallas to say we have a good offense and we'll make up for the yards and points that we give up just to get the ball back a few extra times. I think it kind of makes sense for Dallas in where their team is over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's a gamble that makes sense. The other thing is, if he does catch another one of those years where he gets, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, interceptions, that's the kind of thing that can create, the 2009 New Orleans Saints Super Bowl team, where that was not a particularly good defense. And then that 1 year, they led the NFL in turnovers, right? Like, if Diggs has a year where instead of 3 picks, he gets 10 again, those 7 picks can be the difference between this Dallas defense being good, which it already is, and being like absolutely dominant, right? It absolutely murders teams because it's turning the ball over more. That's the kind of variance that's, I think, worth, particularly for a team like Dallas that's in this world of like banging their head against this glass ceiling and not being able to take that next step. If they just catch that one good year from him, it's worth it, right? Even if it doesn't, like, even if the 5-year average ends up being a net negative or a net, not worth the contract, the 1 year could end up producing a Super Bowl for them. So I get it. I'm not even necessarily against it. I'm just trying to articulate the risk involved or the reality involved of what type of player he is. It's very different than giving that kind of money to a Patrick Surtain type of corner who is, a much more stable down-to-down corner, but probably is never going to have that kind of year that Diggs had.